Grateful that this room is full of so many phenomenal people tonight, folks that are advocates for women's health and folks that are innovators. So again, we're grateful to have all of you in the same room building bridges between these two sectors.
Hi everybody, I'm Lauren Vaccarello. I'm VP of Marketing at Fox, and just echoing what Brian said, I am so amazed at everyone that's here. We have an incredible panel lined up to talk about innovation in women's healthcare. So thank you for coming, and hopefully you'll enjoy the next 2 hours with us, hour with the panel, and hour after.
And I was hoping we could ground tonight not as much in all the strategies, all the battles, all the technology innovations, but actually rooted in women and girls. What this whole thing's about. What the tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars are raised for. What the innovations are about. It's about the people we serve. It's about health. And so let's just take a minute, if we can, to start with just a second of silence in a conference here at South by who has very little silence. And think about somebody, a girl like my daughter, or my 3 or 4 most important women in my life. I want you to think for just a second in silence about somebody you care about a lot, a woman or a girl, and tonight's for them. Okay, so just take a second to go there, because I want to bring those folks here. And take a deep breath or two as well. There aren't too many deep breaths at South by either. I think that's my daughter calling me right there, actually.
She knew we were all thinking about her.
So again, we just wanted to take a second there because everybody's trying to get really loud, and sometimes you just have to get really strategic, and sometimes that strategic can be quieter. And so we want to be rooted in the right place. So how does this thing get started? We're launching something tonight, right?
So tonight we're launching Innovators for Women's Health. Everyone, hopefully you're super excited. Go to www.i4WH.com. So how this really started, it's sort of a funny story, but not funny, haha. So in January, I'm sure everyone here has been getting a little frustrated. And in early January, I read an article in New York Magazine that was talking about the first things that are being attacked when we're thinking about getting rid of the Affordable Care Act. And one of the first things that came under fire was birth control for women and access to free birth control for 55 million women. And I read that and went, of all the things to attack, why are you attacking poor women? This doesn't make any sense. And I got a little upset, and I got a little flustered, and I might have had a couple of glasses of wine, where I had my best thinking, and I emailed Brian and went, this is bullshit. We are going to do something about this. We are going to do something. I am tired of sitting around not doing anything. We can fight this.
And Box.org enables nonprofits and the Box community members to fulfill their social missions. That's what we're in this for. And so as an enabler, I got the email at 11:30 at night. I forwarded it to Cecile's office, and Dawn Legans, and Tom Subak, and 5 or 6 other important people in the women's health movement. And I said, I've got a pissed off VP of marketing, let's do something together. That's a true story. And the next day, the Box Women's Network, big shout out, maybe a round of applause for Box Women's Network, they're in the house. They called me and they said, you did the best party Box has ever done at South by 2 years ago with the nonprofit crowd. We called it the Howdy Hour. They didn't miss space. And they said, we need to do South by parties again. And we hadn't in 2 years. So I started to mention immediately to Cecile's team, can we do something exciting? We brought in JR and his team from Handshake.co, who are a phenomenal organization to partner with. They are the real deal, and that's tonight. So again, a round of applause for these amazing panelists as they come up to their chairs. Cindy, you're coming over here. And so the moment we've all been waiting for, superstars talking to us about their world and where their worlds overlap, and how everybody can really, either with audience innovation, or just the beat on the pulse, the hand on the pulse of women's health, all here in one room. So a nice time to launch i4WH, for sure. Okay, so we're going to go down the road. Most folks have either read press or bios or had the good chance to meet the folks in the front of the room and their teams. But I was hoping they could each speak for a moment about, who showed up tonight and who's here with us and what they're about in the context of tonight, and then we'll get right to it.
Thank you, and thanks everybody here at Box and Handshake for having us. I think it's an honor also at this particular moment to be on a panel with Cecile. I think we're all here in our official capacities as fangirls of Cecile. So I'm Cindi Leive, I edit Glamour, and I'm here for many reasons, but partly because we have 20 million women. Most of them are under 40. Most of them, the vast majority, probably about 94%, use birth control or have used birth control. And I look at their lives, and I think their lives are enabled by this very basic right. Their ability to participate in the economy, everything that they want and can contribute, really hinges on their ability to control their own reproductive decisions. And so I think this is such an incredibly important conversation, not just for women's personal lives, but for our country and its economy right now. So delighted to be here.
Hi everybody, happy South by. My name is Moj Mahdara, I'm the CEO of BeautyCon Media. BeautyCon is a festival, commerce and media publisher for young women, specifically Gen Z. Our mission is about redefining what beauty is and really thinking about beauty beyond a concealer culture. Right? It's about beyond covering up something that's wrong with you and thinking about beauty as an expression of power and creativity. It's a real privilege to be on this panel with you. You know, when I got the email in my inbox, when I was 18 or 19 years old, you know, one of my first paid jobs was to be an organizer for Planned Parenthood on my college campus and organize concerts, which is like funny how those things are so telling about your life and where you go, right? But yeah, and then I remember booking this band at that time for $5 a ticket called No Doubt. And you know, it's really, you know, amazing. And so I'm super passionate about the mission, and I think we live in a day and age where I hope everyone is now woke, right? And you know, I think our citizenship, our rights are, you know, are under attack, and we need to sort of be real woke and real active. So happy to be here.
Everybody. So I want to echo what Cindi said, and I'm a total fangirl of Cecile and the entire panel, and I'm not normally nervous, ever, but I'm in such awe of the people on the panel, so thank you everybody for coming. Quick bit about me, so I'm the VP of Marketing at Box. I think I've got a slightly different angle and approach than a lot of people here. I am a very long-time marketer. I wrote books about marketing, it's great, and then I really look at this and look at what we're doing as, having been in the Valley for the last 10 years, we've got this ability to come in and say, this doesn't make sense anymore. We're not going to take this for granted. How can we disrupt this? How can we change this? How can we make this better? And we haven't done that yet for women's healthcare. And I think now is the time for us to go, you know what? We have this unique ability. We have, as a tech community, unique skill sets and networks and resources. What can we do if we now apply this to women's health and women's healthcare? And how can we really use our abilities and powers as a tech community to really drive change in healthcare? So that gets me super excited.
Hi, I'm Jess, and I'm here tonight because throughout my entire time growing up, in my teens, in my 20s, and now my 30s, the number one thing that ended up hurting the people I love almost always had to do with sexual health and well-being and rights. It was sexual assault and abuse, it was unintended pregnancy, it was STDs, it was feeling ashamed for being gay or trans, and feeling like you're so stigmatized in that world and have nowhere to go. And there are few places to go, whether it be in person or online, when you're dealing with these issues. And I'm a huge fan of Planned Parenthood. And I right now run a tech startup. We're a nonprofit, and we build an online sexual assault reporting system called Callisto. That's really around trying to make a far less traumatizing process for reporting for survivors, where they can do it at their own time, at their own pace, and where we aggregate reports from survivors of the same assailant together, so that they can come forward and identify repeat perpetrators, because 90% of assaults are committed by repeat perpetrators. So.
Well, it's great to be here at Vox. Thank you, Brian, for just being
My pleasure.
so passionate and such a leader. No, I mean, I will say this is not the first thing we've done with Vox, and I just, but it's just a wonderful homecoming. And of course, I'm happy because I'm home in Austin, which is my actually hometown. And yeah, so it's Austin, a great city. Just a couple of things I guess I'd say. One, I just went to, we had a little bit of time, so we get to walk up to the Capitol, and I got to go see my picture of Mom Ann Richards, who was the governor of Texas here for a brief moment back in the day. But I guess I'm here in many ways for her. It's in the women who fought to get us this far, right? And who, you know, way back when women had no rights. And the opportunities now, I think, are huge. I mean, the challenges are huge, but the opportunities are huge. And Cindi and I were just talking about that. So I hope that tonight is about not just the struggles we're facing, which are imminent and important, but I think a whole new generation of young women and men who are ready to change the world. And so that's what I'm excited about. But I also just have to say, before handing over the mic, is that there's been no more passionate proponent of women's rights, women's health, telling women's stories than Cindi Leive and Glamour. And so I hope you all will appreciate the fact that Glamour has been there early often, and you've been a leader and you've given permission or a nudge to other women's magazines to do the same. So thank you. Thanks for doing that.
And so before we kind of tip into the tech side of things, I was really hoping, Cecile, you could ground us a little bit more on two things. One, like, what are some of the acute challenges that women's health faces today? Like, in real clear talk, acutely, like, what is the movement facing, just generally, and maybe we can start there.
Okay. So first, I just want to say something extremely positive, which is actually a lot of folks worked very hard over the last, I'd say, 8 years to get women access to family planning, to preventive care, to cancer screenings, and we have gone light years. And so I think we have to remember that the Affordable Care Act, when it was passed, was really the first chance we had to kind of level the playing field for women. No more gender rating in insurance plans, so women haven't had to pay more for health care for the very first time in our lifetime. There were no more, the insurance industry couldn't block you from coverage if you had a pre-existing condition. And for women, that's a huge issue, whether it has been issues of sexual assault, whether it's been a pregnancy, it's been breast cancer. And then, of course, we fought very hard to get all preventive care covered at no copay. And as was said, 55 million women in this country now have birth control access at no cost, and that is phenomenal. And and I think it's important because, one, we need to fight for it, we need to fight to protect it, but as Cindi said, actually women, the first year of getting this birth control benefit, women save $1.4 billion just in birth control pills. I mean, so for anyone who says, oh, this is a social issue, well, only if you've never had to pay for birth control, and that's an economic issue, right? And we've done a phenomenal job in terms of changing women's outlook. We're at a historic all-time low for pregnancy in America, which is absolutely phenomenal, right? And we're at a 30-year low for unintended pregnancy writ large for women. And this is so important because not having an unintended pregnancy means finishing school. It means getting a job. It means being able to support your family. So it is inextricably, connected to the opportunity for women to pursue careers and live the lives they want to live. And so I think we come together at this moment in which there's nothing but opportunity ahead of us. And yet, we are absolutely facing the biggest challenge to women's healthcare access and rights that we've faced in my lifetime. And so I think in terms of saying what's the acute problem, we'll just call out right now the bill before Congress to repeal the Affordable Care Act and then add it on end access to Planned Parenthood is a very real threat to the opportunities for millions of folks in this country to have access to healthcare. And I think it's particularly important, and the tech community has been great, and I hope we can kind of lift this up. The threat isn't necessarily to women with means. as we know in this country, if you're wealthy, you've always been able to find a way around whatever obstacle there is. But who this bill really hits at is low-income women and women of color in this country, and we have got to stand with them. At Planned Parenthood, we see 2.5 million patients every year, and almost all of them would be affected by this new bill. And just to put a real fine point on it, it's not that we're in the federal budget. We're not. We don't get a line item out of the federal budget. We simply see women who are on Medicaid. And what this bill says is that if you are a woman who relies on public assistance for health care, you can no longer go to Planned Parenthood for cancer screenings, for well woman visits, for basic family planning. And the ripple effect, we know, will be far beyond Planned Parenthood. And so this is a very exciting time to be with the tech community, because I do believe disruption in this field is what we need. And we need folks to stand up for women and women's rights more than ever before. So I look forward to this.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. And so, Cecile, thanks a lot for not only running down a couple of the numbers, but the urgency, the timeline, the policy side of things. You know, some of our panelists have extensive audiences and also help curate a tremendous experience year-round as media organizations. I know that Moj and her crew tend to lean a lot toward innovation. And I was hoping, Moj, you could talk a little bit about maybe innovation's role addressing some of those challenges that Cecile laid out on the table.
Sure. You know, I think we're in an interesting time right now where technology and content have sort of married, right? I think Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram are only so great, so, you know, if we populate it with awesome content. I think publishers are now leaning hard into those platforms, and I think the engagement with content is higher than ever. Women check their phones something to the tune of like 151 times a day, right? That's how many times a day you check your phone to read content, tweets, messages on social platforms, a newsletter, right? We consume far more than our counterparts, right? We are the dominant sort of decider within our household and influencer within our communities in terms of choice. So I think we have an amazing opportunity to make an impact on how things go. And I think the opportunity for technology and content, you know, technology has not really, I don't think the Valley has really shown up as much as they could have and should have. And I think they're really regretting that right now. I think they are, you know, I think they sat on the sidelines thinking it was a done deal, and it was not a done deal. And I think they're all really looking at themselves thinking, you know, we shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? So now this is the time to get active. What I really like right now is that when you see publications like Glamour, BeautyCon, all of the different publications, both Hearst, Condé, across all indies, getting out there and being really active. Like, how many people came out and supported the Women's March? It was amazing. Every single
Millions, right? 3 or 4 million.
Huge.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, I think the consumer, I think the audience, I think the fan is now in control in terms of content. I think that content now needs to tell a story. I think those stories need to be told and heard everywhere. And I think we need to sort of get active. You know, one of the things that I really enjoy right now is how many people really care about local government, local councilmen, getting active in their own state. I think that's where we can all really make a difference. And I like that publishers are no longer interested in what people will think if they're associated to Planned Parenthood, right? It's now, we're at a time where we don't care, we're going to get out and get really active about these issues. So, yeah.
I really appreciate your remarks there, because I think what we're hearing is that the notion of y'all reach a lot of individuals, a lot of consumers in your platforms.
I mean, 78% of our audience are women of color, and a majority of our audience doesn't even really identify in a specific gender, right? This is who I'm, you know, these are my customers, this is my fan base, these are who our followers are, and I'm keenly aware of the fact that there's a changing tide in terms of what beauty is. It's fun seeing large beauty brands and publishers get on board with this new notion of expanding beauty, but you know, it's our job to evangelize and advocate for them, because I don't even think, you know, when you're like a 9-year-old, I don't think they really realize what they just lost in this last election. They're not, so it is our job at BeautyCon every day we think about how can we educate our audience on these issues that you're talking about, how can we connect to them, how can we evangelize for their well-being, their health, because they have enjoyed many years of progress, which now, to your point, is starting to be rolled back. So I think the Valley needs to, I challenge every panel I've been on recently. I'd like to see Twitter, Mark Zuckerberg. I'd like to see Sheryl Sandberg get active about fake news and algorithms and bots and Cambridge Analyticas of the world. And I would like to see publishers keep doing what they're doing, which is pushing out the social agenda that while we may have a certain agenda in the White House, the public doesn't agree.
Hear, hear. And so I'm really jet lagged and I'm Tinder. I told you all I'm Tinder tonight. I'm Tinder. This is a Tinder topic for me. It is. I'll come back to that. But there's this notion of instead of receiving care, that we enable folks to start to manage care. And when I was hearing Moj talk, I was thinking we've been kind of reactive to policy instead of like managing policy. And so I'm hoping to hear just for a second, Lauren, in that we've got business to consumer marketers, you're a business to business marketer. You market to organizations, entities, governments, higher ed, et cetera. Any thoughts from your marketer perspective that the crowd might benefit from? I know we've got a lot of marketers here. Just kind of the B2B side.
Before I go into the B2B side, because I'm up here on the mic, I'm going to go on a 30-second tangent. One of the things that Brian said earlier is take a second, think about a person, think about what this means, because everything that we're doing right now is for us, our daughters, our friends, our sisters, our families, and it's about a person. And I think about my goddaughter. And I have a 2.5-year-old goddaughter, her mom's probably watching, who is the absolute love of my life. And she lives in a world where she's too young to know, to Moj's point, what she just lost. And what drives me in so many ways is I don't ever want her to know what she lost. By the time she's old enough to realize we need to prevent her from losing anything. This can't be real. This has to be a moment in time that we stand up and we push forward and we strive for. And when I start to think about technology and the technology industry and marketing, we have, to our point, we have access to a different skill set, to a different network, and to additional resources. And what do we need to do to really go out and be vocal and make a stand? How do we start to promote more content? How do we become more vocal with the tech stands with Planned Parenthood? If you guys haven't seen all of the hashtag tech stands with PP, to show that this is important to us. Everyone in this room that is watching has a network, has people that if we start going out and we start publicly standing up every single day for Planned Parenthood, for women's healthcare, we have the audience, we have the networks, we have the communities to go and to do this so that people who are making policy decisions realize we are not a group that can be silenced, we are not a group that can easily be brushed aside, that we are in fact the majority, and if they continue to go in a certain direction, they might not have jobs in 2 years. And that's how we start to fight, and that's the first way we fight. And then going into the content piece, what can we do as technologists, as innovators, as marketers to start to think about what are the problems we want to solve? What are the problems that Cecile needs help solving? What are the problems that women's healthcare needs solving? Today, it is making sure that women are still protected with everything that'll happen to the Affordable Care Act. What are the issues we're going to have tomorrow? How are different clinics, different women going to be able to collaborate better? And how do we start to solve those issues? And really, all of us need to remember the power that we have with our own networks, with our own communities, and going out and standing up.
So speaking to those networks, and I promise I'm going to give you all this mic, because that mic's not as good as this one, so let's be sure you're right in there. We've got a very janky live stream going on Facebook right now on my phone, actually, right there. That's right. Hi, honey. My daughter, my wife. Hi. It's on the Facebook page for Box, at least. All right. So, yeah, it's legit. So, what I was going to touch on briefly here is this notion of managing our health. There you go. That happened. Managing our health, we're like taking control ourselves and being proactive with our networks, with the technology that we can build in the tech space. So, Jess Lab, one of my dear friends, is doing just that. She's building a tremendous innovation. And I was hoping you could speak a little bit, Jess, A, to your work, but how your work which is kicking butt on campuses nationwide, right, in a space that I am really passionate about, as you know. Hits close to home. If you could articulate how even the developers and the technologists and the influencers in this room could even elevate your platform, let alone all the other things we need to listen to Cecile and her peers on, I'd like to hear that from a startup founder, and then I'll trade you mics.
Thank you. So right now on college campuses, 1 in 5 women and 1 in 13 men are sexually assaulted by the time they graduate, which is crazy. Less than 10% ever report their assault. Among those who do report and who know their assailant, only 6% of their assailants end up spending a single day in prison, meaning there's a 99% chance they'll get away with it. So not only does this mean that there's basically no justice for survivors of sexual assault, it also means that there's basically no deterrent to sexual assault in this country, right? Like if you had a 1% chance of getting in trouble for something, like, would that really stop you? Probably not. Meanwhile, 90% of sexual assaults are committed by repeat offenders who on average assault 6 people each. And that's just by the time they've graduated college. So you have this kind of mishmash of survivors who don't feel particularly empowered or supported in this reporting process, and these repeat offenders who just kind of keep getting away with it again and again and again, and are learning that those behaviors are acceptable. So I want to change that. And
You are changing that.
Thank you. And so our platform, Callisto, is really built around what do survivors want. So we talked to over 100 college sexual assault survivors about what reporting system they wish existed for them. And we built out an online system that allows them to learn about reporting options, save what happened to them timestamps so we can preserve evidence even if they don't want to report yet, report electronically, or report if somebody else names the same assailant. And we launched a 1.5 years ago. The reporting rate quadrupled on our pilot campuses, and we're growing campus to campus with the goal of eventually going national and partnering with every institution in the country and having a free national version for any survivor who needs it.
Yes, yes, yes.
And then to how the tech community can help. I think there are a million ways. I think one is there are not nearly enough startups in this space. It's like there are so many different food delivery apps. Like, don't build a food delivery app.
I love me some delivery. I love me some delivery.
Like, I'm all about it.
Listen.
And so, really innovate in the space. Like, innovate in women's health. Innovate in the space of rights, because there aren't nearly enough people doing it. And like, Planned Parenthood is making some really amazing technology. They're making some amazing apps in the house, and we need more and more folks contributing their ideas to this and grounding it in the reality of the people who are affected by these issues. Not just being like, oh, I have an idea, I'm gonna like build this thing and not test it. Like, actually talk to the people who have experienced these problems. Do your homework, but build and innovate. So I think there's that. There's volunteer for organizations like Planned Parenthood, like mine. If you have an amazing skill set, so use it. There's donate. There's, of course, there's always donate. There's show up. There's stand up. There's use your voice and your power. And you have a lot of power. And don't underestimate that.
Yeah. And at the beginning of the talk, I zoomed in a little bit when we took our deep breaths, and I was thinking of 2 of my family members who faced, what Callisto is stopping. And back to the tenderness here. The reality is, I was talking to Jess at this conference last week, and she was going to have her 6 minutes of fame up there with the NBC cameras rolling. And we're high energy friends, so we're back and forth. What are you going to say? What are you going to prioritize? How are you going to say it? What are you going to open with? What's the example you're going to use? And she stopped me and she said, and I said, what's the biggest thing? What is it you're doing? What does Callisto do? And I swear to God, she put her hand on my forearm and she said, Brian, we want to stop rape. That's all she had to open with. I said, you just got your opener. That's your opener. But I want you to think about that, because you've got an entrepreneur on the stage who, with the right technologist, the right team, the right beneficiary, the right victim, the right person that is, falls in the pathway of folks that do that, she's empowered. And the tech community, with all our power, all our resources, our networks, and our reach can help her in rape. More silence, that's good, that's good. So, wow, that landed. Okay, so, wanted to have Cindi just speak to anything that her heart desires, because you have, like, so many things that you do. I just want you to just, like, say stuff, and we'll see where that goes. Is that okay?
Is anybody here, did anybody watch Stranger Things? Do you guys want to talk about that? Okay, on topic. No. It's interesting. Yes, 11. We'll talk about that later. You know, Moj, when you were talking before about your audience and and where they are and where their beliefs are, I think a lot of our audience at Glamour is in the same place. A lot of young women are feeling incredibly energized and also terrified right now with this idea that these rights that they've had could be taken away. But we do have a slightly different audience, and on some of our platforms, we do get a lot of backlash when we talk about pro-choice issues, and particularly when we come down unequivocally on the side. I would say it's not so much on the side of Planned Parenthood; it's on the side of objective truth. But I think that's okay. I mean, I think we have some of our colleagues here in the room, and I think we all feel okay about potentially pissing people off if we're doing it in a respectful way. And what we're doing is really standing up for what's accurate and true. There are a lot of people out there who still believe that abortion causes breast cancer. I mean, that was actually written into law in several states until not that long ago, where women had to be told that there was a risk of developing breast cancer if they had an abortion. It was completely fake news, as they say. But there are a lot of people who still believe that. They believe that pro-choice organizations are selling baby parts. I mean, these are things that are in people's consciousness, and I think it is okay and imperative for us as a brand that supports women to take a stand against those falsehoods, even if it does piss people off. And I guess one thing that I'm thinking about, even as we're sitting here talking about it, is there is this temptation to say that this is a right that is for women, and I think it certainly is. I have a daughter. I never want her to lose the right to make her own decisions about her body. But also, if you think about our culture, this is something that is important for all of us. It's important for the country. It's important for the economy. It's not a coincidence that the pill became largely legal in around 1960, and after that, you saw women being able to stay in college and graduate from college and go into the workforce. That's not a coincidence. It's not like the pill was some special thing that happened on some other track and it had to do with women's personal lives. It actually enabled this massive social change, and now we live in a society where we depend on two-income families, right? Like if women didn't work, everything would fall apart. I mean, it's not like they would just lose this little, personal right and then everything else would continue as normal. It absolutely would not. And that is something that all of us, no matter what our political viewpoints, I think need to really care about and be invested in. So there is part of me that I find myself sometimes worrying when we talk about it too much just as a women's right, although I deeply believe that it is a woman's right. It's also an imperative for our country. We've all got to get behind this.
And so Cecile gave me the honor of presenting to 100 of her largest donors once in Washington, D.C. And I opened in front of a room of 100 folks, majority female, majority over 50. And I just said, show of hands, and Cecile, she probably doesn't remember this, but I was there to communicate the power of technology, and this goes back a number of years. I was working for LinkedIn at the time. And I said, how many of us in the room were a part of this movement, 10 years ago? And every hand went up. And I said, how many of you in the room were a part of the Federation's movement, that family, in 1993, 94, 95, and through there? And a few hands went up, and I said, I want to thank you very much for all of my free birth control during undergrad. and they're like, and the whole crowd loved it. Like, they just totally loved it. But I looked at Cecile, I'm like, did I go too far opening with that? That's what we do, okay. And since that time, and I went and got free birth control because my best friend's mom was on the board of Planned Parenthood in Chicago, and so I was hearing a lot of stories, understanding how brave she had to be in the Midwest to fight the wars that she fought. Fast forward, 2009, one of my fraternity brothers, though he's older than I am, a guy named George Tiller, you may have heard his story, a surgeon, got gunned down in his church parking lot in 2009 for being in women's health and doing work with families that potentially were in pregnancies that the mom was going to die if she had that baby. And he helped out with that. And that was the end of his life. Enjoy the tenderness again. So I grew up in college, understanding what George's thoughts were, because he was a supporter of an organization I was a part of in college, so I was close to his work. Fast forward, in the past 5 years, a partner of mine had a surgery, a relatively significant surgical type procedure at a Planned Parenthood in the Bay Area. And then I've always connected tech to the Federation, and so I'm really vested there. I was hoping that Cecile, you could talk to us a little bit about some of the partnerships as we now switch to action and a productive response to what we're facing. What is a relationship in the tech field that you've come to respect and appreciate? Tumblr, I know you've done some great stuff with them. They help you really get the word out. Could you articulate for all the tech owners and founders and C-level people that are in this room how a partnership with you or a similar organization, hyper-local or national, could do? What's that look like?
Sure, absolutely. I wanted to say,
I think I poured a beer in this one.
But I also wanted to just reflect back on what Cindi said about the fact that reproductive health issues are not just women's issues. And it's been a couple of things. One, for folks who went to the marches, and again, I think it is important in this moment where we feel somewhat under siege, that these are the largest marches in the history of the United States of America. These marches for women's rights. This wasn't when you think of it, 1 of every 100 people was marching somewhere. And not just in Washington and Los Angeles and San Francisco, but Salt Lake City, Utah, and in Austin, Texas, and in Tallahassee, Florida. The largest march in the history of Texas was here that day. So, but the thing that was to me, so striking about the marches is that it wasn't just women marching. And there were fathers marching with their daughters, and there were grandfathers marching with and for their granddaughters, because I think we are finally at a tipping point in this country where fathers expect that their daughters are going to have every single opportunity that their sons have, and they're going to fight for that. And that is when it is no longer just a women's issue. And the other piece of this is, it's also an issue of sexual health and rights writ large. And so I say this as an on behalf of an organization that now 10% of our patients are men, right? They come in, I'll tell you, we do thousands and thousands of tests for STIs and treatment. And I was born in Waco, Texas, and I can tell you, if you need to get tested for an STI in Texas, you may not want to go to your family doctor or the public health, but you absolutely know you can go to Planned Parenthood because you will not be shamed, you will not be stigmatized, we're there to help, right? And this struck me the other day, I was actually in San Diego where we had the waiting room was full of men. I was like, what's going on today? Well, it was vasectomy day at Planned Parenthood in San Diego. So I think that it is important to recognize that these services are broader. And the last point I'll make on this is we are very proud now to be providing transgender services all across this country. And it has been such a learning experience, candidly, even for me, to recognize the stigma and shame that transgender people face in this country, not only just in living their lives, but literally trying to find a healthcare provider where they are welcomed and can get honest and excellent medical care. So I think it is important when we talk about these issues now, it isn't just a women's issue anymore. So, to your question about how segregated health, I'll say we see 2.5 million patients through our health centers every year. We now see 6 million every month online. And so technology in Planned Parenthood to me was like a marriage made in heaven. And that has been possible because of working with Google, has been an incredible partner in making sure that when folks go online or go on their mobile phone and need to find reproductive health care, they can find us. We just launched recently mobile appointment making, the only national women's health care provider or a sexual and reproductive health care provider that does that. We booked 1 million appointments on mobile phones last year alone. And this is where technology is so amazing, because half of these appointments are being made after hours. They're being made by young people who may not actually be able to gut up and pick up the phone and talk to someone and say, I need to come in. But they can now go on their mobile phone. And that, to me, is the beauty of technology. And we run a text chat program with young people. We do, I don't know, several thousand every month. And many of them are young people who wonder if they couldn't text with us and say, I think I might be pregnant, or I think I need to see a doctor. If that wasn't there, would they ever get the health care that they need? And so I've loved working with the tech community, because I think it's not only disruptive, but it literally takes away barriers to getting basic access to health care that is everyone's right and should be available to everyone in this country.
Amazing, amazing. And back there on January 12th, when Lauren Vaccarello sent me a tipsy email in the middle of the night, just completely upset about what was out there, I realized soon that a community that could be informed about the types of things that Cecile's been speaking to as a conduit to their knowledge of what the priorities are, what those barriers to remove are. You've now got a community that can start to self-organize a little bit around organizing and taking cues from the implementers, from the practitioners, from the providers, and not being the worst part of tech, which is thinking we can solve it all without the right inputs. And so that's what that bridge is, which does address that arrogance of tech, where we're coming into this humbly and saying, we know you've had some wins in this area. Online appointment booking is a good example of that. How can we build further on that? And how can we start to get to some of the antecedents for the challenges, be they poverty-related or health-related and so on, at scale? And so, is anybody else itching to say a few things right now? If not, just kind of check in on the time. How are we doing on time?
7:54.
Okay, so anybody want to sound off on some closing remarks? We're then going to hear from an amazing woman, Michelle Sullivan, and then do a quick wrap-up. Other thoughts, Moj?
This has been amazing. I've learned a lot. I would love to be a partner with you moving forward and helping tell the story beyond. I think that we can, as publishers, as tech people, do a much better job of telling the stories of Planned Parenthood beyond what is largely used to somewhat suffocate you, I think, is this apportioned sort of hatchet, job that's what they say Planned Parenthood is. I think there's a lot of different stories, and I think what really sticks out for me is people living in poverty and people of color and trans people, like, not having access to healthcare. I think I read a stat recently where there was a Planned Parenthood that had closed down, I guess, and in that area the rates of HIV had almost immediately skyrocketed. Right? Indiana. And so, Mike Pence, right? Okay. So, look, and I think it's beyond, I want to just say that the one thing I want to be clear about is I think it's beyond Republican, Democrat issue at this point. I think, right? I think it's, I'm not a Republican. I've never voted Republican, but I know lots of people who are Republican who are actually all right and cool and friends of mine. And no, but I don't think they like this. I think they think this has gone too far, and this is not what's going on now. Is actually beyond tax breaks and beyond what's going on with NAFTA and beyond sort of business issues. Like there's sort of a human rights violation happening. So I don't think women. I read a stat recently that companies that have women on their boards do better, and I think it's a bright, so I think it's all of our jobs to tell great stories, tell your stories, tell stories about you and your successes beyond what's put out there to sort of shut you down. We want to be your partner in that. I want to be your partner as well. And thank you, of all the tech companies I've ever worked with, and many, 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 Fox has always been, Aaron Levy, Jay, these are some amazing people, so I just want to say thank you. It's a little bad because I slammed the platforms, but I am a little sour with them I feel like they need to, they have the resources to go, if they can put things in space, right? I think Tesla's they're doing their first right? Isn't Elon Musk?
There's space stuff there.
Right, like he's got
Big batteries.
people he's taking on a cruise in space, right? Like we can give people birth control, like right? No? So I feel like tech needs to like beyond like $1 million contribution, like they can put people in space so they can give everyone birth control.
That's right, on Earth, on planet Earth.
And they can put people in.
So speaking of planet Earth, I had a chance to have dinner last night with Michelle Sullivan. Michelle is the president of the Caterpillar Foundation. And what's amazing about Michelle is that she was in